This portion of the John Fredericks Show is brought to you by Hargrave Military Academy. Attend an educational and informative open house event at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia. For more information, visit online at hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Academy. Build his future.
Joining us now is the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Bill Bolling. Great to have you with us, Lieutenant Governor.
Good morning, John. Good to be with you.
All right, big debate on Saturday. What's your analysis?
Well, I thought it was pretty much what I would have expected. I think both of the candidates tried to press their respective claims. You had Mr. Cuccinelli trying to paint Mr. McAuliffe as a Washington insider and a Virginia outsider who doesn't have the experience necessary to lead Virginia. On the other hand, you had McAuliffe trying to paint Mr. Cuccinelli as an ideological extremist who can't be trusted to lead Virginia. So pretty much what I expected. Not a very uplifting debate, not a very positive debate. Unfortunately, not a lot of discussion about the big issues facing our state, but pretty much what I would have expected from this first debate. And I hope that I guess they got 3 or 4 more of these debates before the election. My hope is that at some point we'll be able to move beyond the name calling and the personal attacks and actually talk about some of the big issues facing the state.
So we thought also, I agree with you on that, there was a lot of small ball going on. There were some good zingers in there, but, a lot of the talk about McAuliffe taking his green tech company to Mississippi, I sort of understand the argument, but at the end of the day, who cares?
Well, I've always felt that argument that they make about green tech going to Mississippi is an invalid argument. Frankly, we would have loved to have had that project in Virginia. John, we'd love to have every project in Virginia, but we know that we're not going to get every project. And the truth is that Mississippi offered green tech a very attractive financial incentive package, and it's one that we would not have been able to meet. And, I think as McAuliffe pointed out correctly on Saturday, he had a fiduciary responsibility to the investors of the company to take the company where it made the most business sense for them to be. And in this particular case, that turned out to be Mississippi. I actually thought that Mr. Cuccinelli kind of walked into one by raising that argument because McAuliffe was ready for it. And if you remember, that's when he responded. And by the way, you had a fiduciary duty to the people of Virginia to prosecute the tax claim against Star Scientific. And at a time when you should have been taking them to court, they were taking you to New York City on their private jet. So it's just you said it right. It was a lot of small ball. I mean, this candidate trying to get a gotcha against the other candidate, and vice versa. And at this point, this campaign has kind of been, you ought to vote for me because you don't like the other guy. What I'd like to see the campaign become is you ought to vote for me because I'm offering some sort of a positive vision for the future of our state that you agree with. And at this point, I don't think either candidate has really been able to demonstrate that kind of a campaign. Whether they will or not, I don't know. I've always feared that this would be a very negative, very personal campaign. I've called it a couple times a race to the bottom. Hopefully at some point in this process that will change and the candidates will start talking and offering a more positive message. And I really think, John, the candidate who can do that, who can maybe move beyond the soundbite temptations of attacking and criticizing their opponent and offer a positive vision, is probably going to be the candidate that's got the better chance of capturing this, let's say, 20 or 25% of the independent voters who, at the end of the day, are going to determine who wins this election.
Now, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, historically speaking, in Virginia, 2013, the off-year cycle with the incumbent president that's in office, the out party in Virginia wins. I mean, you've got to go back almost, 3.5 decades to find where that trend didn't hold up. Right off the bat, doesn't that give the advantage to the Republicans?
Well, it does in that sense, and the fact that it is an off-year election with a low voter turnout, I mean, this will probably be a 40% or so voter turnout, I think, is a definite advantage to Mr. Cuccinelli. Unfortunately, so far in the campaign, it's about his only advantage. The money is clearly going to be on Mr. McAuliffe's side. My hunch is by the time the campaign's over, he will outraise Mr. Cuccinelli at least 2 or 3 to 1. So the money will be on his side, and that's important because you can have the best message in the world, but if you don't have the resources to deliver it on radio and TV in September and October, that's a problem. So I think that's on Mr. McAuliffe's side. And frankly, just the current attitude in Virginia politics, John, with all of the controversy that's swelling around Star Scientific and gift acceptance and gift disclosure, it just doesn't paint Republicans in a very positive light. I think that's probably an advantage for Mr. McAuliffe. So, if you look at the campaign, if you look at some of the recent polls, I think they're probably fairly accurate. I would say at this point it's probably an advantage McAuliffe, maybe by the 4 or 5 points that the polls reflect. But it's very early in this campaign, and again, this race is not going to be decided by Republicans or Democrats. It's going to be decided by the 20 or 25% of independent voters, and many of them have not started focusing on this race, won't start focusing on this race until September or October. So, having a message that resonates with those voters is going to be important. I think it's got to be something more than vote for me because the other guy's a bad guy. And then having the resources to deliver the message is going to be important. And then the passion of your supporters in turning out to the polls and a low voter turnout off your election is going to be important. So this race could still go either way. I think either one of these candidates could still win the race, and it'll be won or lost, I really do think, in September and October when folks really start tuning in a little bit more.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, what do you believe is that winning message to independents that you just referenced? What is that?
Well, in the environment that we have today politically, John, I think it may be more of an attitude than it is necessarily a specific issue. And it's the attitude of just being able to make people feel good about you and your background, your knowledge, your experience, your qualification to lead the state. The fact that you've got your focus on the big issues facing Virginia, it's a message of what you want to do to move Virginia forward and build a better Virginia, and talking about what you want to do to continue to maintain the financial stability and the economic stability of our state, while at the same time talking about what you want to do to improve opportunities for people to improve the quality of their life in critical areas like education and health care and public safety and the like. So I think the candidate that can emerge from this fray as being the candidate that is offering some sort of a positive vision for the future of Virginia is the candidate that's going to resonate with voters. And right now I think you got a lot of people who simply don't know Mr. McAuliffe because he hasn't been involved in Virginia public life that much in the past. So he has to define himself to those voters. You've got a lot of people who do know Mr. Cuccinelli, but for one reason or another don't like him, or they're concerned about whether or not he might be too extreme for Virginia. He has to redefine himself to those voters. So I think both of these candidates would be well suited if they simply moved beyond attacking their opponent and calling into question their trustworthiness and their ability to lead the state, and started on their own trying to offer some positive vision that made people feel good about them. It's not just enough to make people feel bad about your opponent. You got to give them a reason to vote for you. And at this particular point in the campaign, I don't think either candidate has really been able to do that.
Lieutenant Governor, let's talk for a minute about the other two races on the ticket, Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General. What do you see there?
Well, I think in the Attorney General's race, it's an advantage to Mr. Obenshain. Republicans usually do pretty well in the Attorney General's race. It's been a long time since we actually had a Democratic Attorney General in Virginia, and I was very impressed by the fact that Mark Obenshain had actually done pretty well on the fundraising front.
Yes.
In the report that was issued a couple of weeks ago, had a significant lead there over the Democrat Mark Herring. So, I think Mark is in a pretty good position in that race. In the Lieutenant Governor's race, John, honestly, I would have told you I thought E.W. Jackson had no chance of winning the Lieutenant Governor's race because of some of the controversies swelling around some of the comments that he's made in the past. But those comments will only hurt Bishop Jackson if his opponent, Senator Northam, has the resources to deliver that message to the voters. And I thought Ralph Northam's financial report issued last week was dismal. He had raised very little money, nowhere near what someone should have raised at this point in an election cycle. And if he's not able to deliver that message to voters about some of these things that Bishop Jackson has said in the past, which I think could be very problematic for him, then that may turn out to be a moot point. So that race could be a little more competitive than maybe I thought it would be a month or so ago, depending on what happens over the course of the next few months. But at the end of the day, the down ticket races are always influenced heavily by what happens at the top of the ticket. If the race at the top of the ticket is close, then the down ticket races will probably be closer. If one of the two gubernatorial candidates is able to break away and win by a sizable margin, then that will help pull up the candidates in the down ticket races. Mm-hmm. Right now, very few voters even know who's running for lieutenant governor or attorney general. So each of those candidates has an opportunity to define themselves and their opponents if they have the resources to do it. And I would say of the four down-ticket candidates, the only one right now that seems to be in a pretty good position to do that is Mark Obenshain. The other three candidates so far really are not meeting expectations.
You evaluated running as a third-party independent. You chosen not to. Any regrets?
Oh, no, I think we made the right decision. I said all along that I would not get into the race as an independent candidate unless I thought I had a realistic chance of winning. My conclusion at the time was that I was pretty confident that we could get 20 or 25% of the vote, but without the ability to raise $10 or $15 million, I thought it would be hard to win. That's still my assessment, John. And in addition to that, there were two other reasons I talked about at the time. One was the fact that even though I'm very concerned about the current direction of the Republican Party, I've got a lot of good Republican friends across the state who have done a lot for Gina Ann and me over the years, and I wasn't prepared to sever those relationships. Mm-hmm. And then finally, and it was a big factor in the decision. I've done this for 22 years, mm-hmm. and frankly, it's just not as exciting to me as it used to be. Not as much fun for me as it used to be. Politics has changed a lot. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more ideologically driven today, a lot more hyper-partisan today, in many ways a lot more mean-spirited today. And, I just decided the time had come for us to turn the page and look for other ways to serve. So, no, I think we made the right decision, and I'm still very comfortable with the decision that we that we made. It gives me an opportunity to step back and watch some of this stuff a little bit from the outside, try to comment on it a little more objectively, and I tell you what, it also gives me a chance to have a lot more dinners at home with Gina Ann and sit on the deck a little bit and read a book, and I got to do more trout fishing this spring than I've done in a long time. So, no, I'm very much at peace with the decision we made. I think it was, for a lot of reasons, the right decision.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, what holds for your political future in Virginia?
Well, I guess there are three answers to that, John. First of all, we've got, 6 more months left on our term, and we've got a lot of work to do over the next 6 months. I'm going to continue to do my best working with Governor McDonnell to make sure that we finish strong and continuing to focus on the responsibility I've been given in the area of economic development and job creation. Beyond that, politically speaking, I'm not sure what the future holds. I'm going to focus a lot of my time on our Virginia mainstream project, trying to get the Republican Party back to what I call a more mainstream place, but also trying to get the political process back to a more mainstream place that focuses more on results and just trying to solve problems and get things done. And, beyond that, we'll just have to wait and see. See what happens in November and see what happens over the course of the next several months. I'm looking forward to getting back to the private sector. I'm a business guy. I came out of the private sector, so I'm looking forward to getting back into the private sector, focusing on growing our business, and then we'll just take the rest of it one day at a time. I think probably going forward. I'm always going to want to stay involved. As I've told you many times, I love Virginia. Mm-hmm. I'm always going to be looking for a way to stay involved in helping make Virginia a better place. Whether I'll do that through elected office or not is questionable, maybe even doubtful. But I'll be doing it through some way, through the Virginia Main Street Project and maybe some other things that I've got an interest in. I'm always going to be looking for a way to stay involved in making Virginia a better place. But as you and your listeners know, there are lots of ways that you can do that, not just through elected office.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, final question, then we're out of time. Governor McDonnell, what should he do right now? Resign, hang in there? What do you think?
Well, I thought the best advice on that actually came from Mr. McAuliffe over the weekend when he just encouraged people to kind of stand down a little bit, take a breath. There's a process underway here with some of these investigations that are taking place. Let's see what those investigations find. Clearly, I think there were some mistakes made in the types of gifts and amounts of gifts that were accepted. Maybe some mistakes made in not disclosing some of those gifts. But I think that's been a very tough thing, John, by the way, for the governor and his family. Yes. They've endured this has been an agonizing process for them over the last few months, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. But the question is whether or not any of this rises to the level of any sort of illegal activity. That's what these investigations will determine. I hope they will determine, and I think they will determine that it does not rise to the level of illegal activity. And if that's what they determine, then hopefully we can learn from this, turn the page, and move on. So I think the best thing we can all do at this point in time is keep our focus on doing our jobs day by day, let this process unfold, and once we know the result of these ongoing investigations, then we can deal with all the what-if scenarios. But to do that until these investigations are completed, I think is premature, and frankly, it's probably not fair to everybody involved.
Well, I just got to end with this final question. Johnnie Williams, I mean, he's been able to provide some stuff for the Attorney General, for the governor. What about you?
Yeah, everybody
you didn't get anything.
That. I don't know if it's my good fortune or his, but I don't think I've ever met the man. I've never gotten any gifts from him. We even went back and looked, and I think we found one small contribution from him to my campaign, maybe back in 2005 when I ran for lieutenant governor the first time. But whether it's my good fortune or his, I don't know Mr. Williams, and I haven't received anything from him, and trust me, I am thankful for that.
Not even a Christmas ham. You got nothing from Johnnie Williams.
Not even a Christmas card, I don't think.
Okay, Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling, thank you for joining us here on the John Fredericks Show. We're out of time, and we will definitely have your independent analysis back on our show, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Bye-bye.